Enlisted is coming to Steam quite soon, being that it has a release date of Q1 2024, which is going to be over at the end of March, so we're looking like month and a half away. Now, Enlisted is by no means a perfect game, nor is any game out there, but there's some crucial problems that I think Enlisted needs to solve before it releases on Steam. There's two primary issues that I can think of, and if they aren't resolved, I think the Steam release could potentially stumble into that mostly negative space of reviews and would require just a monumentous amount of effort to recover from. I think the majority of Enlisted players are going to be able to easily identify and will agree with me on the two issues I'm going to be talking about. First, the silver economy in the game, and second, the battle rating system. Let's jump into the silver economy first. We should start by first understanding the silver economy of the game. In Enlisted, you earn about 1 silver for every 10 XP that you earn, or 10%. It's actually more like 10.5, but we're going to just round it off at 10 because it's a lot easier for the math. So if you were to earn, say, 100,000 XP, you get about 10,000 silver during that time to spend on whatever you want. For the majority of unlocks in Enlisted, this actually works out really well. It's fine. In the time that it takes you to unlock the STG-44, for example, you'll earn 18,000 silver, which is enough to buy 6 STG-44s, which is enough to equip like 1.5 squads with the weapons, which, in my mind, is fine, right? I don't think that you need any more than that. So then what's the actual problem then? Well, it comes from the fact that you have a lot of other things to make, especially early on. Like soldiers, medkits, grenades, mines, backpacks. All of these things you're buying early on, and so you're essentially kind of going into this debt where you're never able to quite buy the weapons that you want to. And Enlisted is a game that has an unbelievable variety of weapons, vehicles, and tools that are available to each player to play around with and find their gameplay style. But the silver system is built in such a way that you're often spending so much time scrounging for just little scraps of silver to equip your soldiers with the absolute basic necessities that you're not even able to begin to experiment with all the fun equipment that's available. There's a lot of potential solutions to this, but honestly, I'm a fan of the most simple fix possible. Increase silver gain. I say that increasing it to 15% of XP earned rather than 10% would be more than enough. That should be enough of a boost to allow players more breathing room and a better ability to experiment with what makes Enlisted special and what they enjoy with the game. Moving on to our second issue of the video, the battle rating system. It's important to note that before we begin, the battle rating system is worlds ahead of what the old campaign system was. Despite what the occasional forum post or Redditor wants you to believe, it is just so much better. But that doesn't mean it's good enough. Now, in my view, the battle rating system has two major flaws. The first is the imbalance of BR3. Now, in theory, having a battle rating that can go up or down is really interesting and cool. You could see like a huge range of maps, vehicles, and get an incredibly varied experience every time you play. But in reality, it kind of just causes frustrations for everyone involved in BR3 games, which is everyone in game. Low tier players are being forced into matches against BR3 players who have better equipment, tanks, and planes, and they just end up frustrated that they really can't fight these guys on equal footing. While the BR3 players on the other side just end up in a boring game of absolutely stomping players who are at a distinct disadvantage. After all, a Panzer IV-J in BR3 is going to just absolutely smack down any Stuarts or anything like that are driving around. It's just not a very on par experience for both sides. When the BR3 player, however, is up-tiered, the same thing happens except reversed. The BR3 player is frustrated at how they're constantly being dominated by players who have better gear and better equipment, while the BR5 players end up either bored or frustrated by the amount of low-tier players on their team or the enemy team. It's never a fun experience to spawn in your King Tiger and you look over and the guy next to you is in a Panzer IV-J, and you know that you're just going to get smacked down by the enemy team because you know that they have more BR5 players or they have a higher tier overall, and you're just at a disadvantage, right? It forces the BR5 players to do a lot more heavy lifting for the matches rather than having a fair and balanced experience for everyone overall. So it's just not a good experience for anyone involved with these BR3 matches. Now, before we get to a solution, let's talk about the second issue. The second issue with BR is specifically catered towards Germany, and it might be resolved over time, but it's still worth mentioning. Now, as it stands right now, BR5 Axis teams are actually at a built-in disadvantage at BR5 specifically. The reason for this is that BR5 Western Allied players can only play in Normandy against Germany. What this means is that anytime a high-tier Normandy game is created, it's just naturally more likely for the Allies to have BR5 players, more BR5 players I mean, than the Axis, since all BR5 players for the Allies are going to be in Normandy matches exclusively, while BR5 Germany players are going to be split and will sometimes actually fight against the Soviets as well. So if you had an equal amount of BR5 German and BR5 Allied players, the German players are going to be split between Soviet games and Allies games, while all of the Allied players are just going to get dumped in. So you're always going to have, generally speaking, on average, more BR5 Allies players in these matches as opposed to BR5 Axis players. At least, again, if you're assuming that you have equal player numbers, which isn't the case, but generally speaking, I think this is happening. It's my experience that this is happening. And like I mentioned before, this can be naturally resolved once Japan gets BR5, right? But as it stands right now, it's a big problem specifically for BR5 Axis. So then what are my solutions for BR? Well, it's actually kind of simple, in my opinion. I think the best solution is to create a new BR bracket, or brackets, I suppose. Instead of 2 brackets of 1 to 3 and 3 to 5, as we have now, we instead should have 3 brackets, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and 5. And in the future, if we get a 6, we could have a 6 on top of that 5 and 6. In my opinion, this more clearly lines up the power levels of weapons of each BR. After all, BR4 has the G43, the Gewehr 43, while or maybe it has the ZH. I think it has the ZH29 in BR4. But then BR5 has like the FG42, which seems like such a big jump between those 2 weapons. I mean, one is fully automatic select fire rifle, while the other one is a semi-automatic rifle. Or the STG going from, the Kirali 40M to the STG, which is such a powerhouse weapon. I mean, those 2 being in the same bracket seems crazy to me. It also solves our BR3 imbalance, since instead of having a bracket that will go up or down, we always know exactly who we're going to be playing against and can balance around that. Now, the big downside to this is the creation of a new queue, which the player base may not be capable of handling. That's something that I can't personally account for, since I have no information about that, and it's something that the devs are going to have to investigate and make a decision on their own, since, again, there's just no way that I can make an accurate guess or assumption about that in any way. But that's it, guys. What do you all think about these issues and the solutions that I proposed? Are there other issues that you guys think are important and need to be solved before a Steam release? Leave a comment down below, and while you're there, like and subscribe. It does help me out as always. But again, without anything else, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.